It was a cold, rainy night when John first stepped into the small, nondescript food restaurant on the outskirts of town. He had recently moved to the area and was desperately in need of a job to make ends meet. The Diner Delight sign buzzed dimly, casting an eerie glow on the rain-soaked sidewalk. John pushed open the creaking door and was greeted by the warm, comforting smell of frying bacon and sizzling onions. The diner was cozy, with red vinyl booths lining the walls and a long, gleaming counter in the center. Behind the counter stood a tall man with thinning gray hair and a tired expression. His name tag read Frank. He looked up from wiping down the counter as John entered and gave him a curt nod. "Can I help you?" Frank asked, his voice gruff. John cleared his throat nervously. "I saw the help wanted sign in the window. I'm looking for a job." Frank raised an eyebrow and eyed John up and down. "You got any experience?" John hesitated for a moment before nodding. "Yeah, I've worked in a few kitchens before. I can cook, clean, and do whatever else you need." Frank grunted and motioned for John to take a seat at the counter. "Have a seat. We'll see if you're worth hiring." Over the next hour, Frank grilled John with questions about his past jobs, his culinary skills, and his ability to handle pressure. John answered each question as honestly as he could, doing his best to impress the stern man behind the counter. Finally, Frank leaned in and spoke in a low, conspiratorial tone. "I'll give you a shot, kid, but I run a tight ship here. You mess up, and you're out. You hear me?" John nodded eagerly. "I won't let you down, Mr. Frank." Frank handed John an apron and pointed to the kitchen. "Put that on and get to work. You start tonight." As John entered the kitchen, he couldn't help but notice that it was strangely cold, even for a rainy night. He shivered as he tied the apron around his waist and began his first night at Diner Delights. The days turned into weeks, and John settled into his new routine at Diner Delights. He quickly became a valuable member of the team, handling orders with speed and precision. However, there was something about the kitchen that always made him uneasy. Late at night, when the restaurant was empty and the rain tapped softly against the windows, John would hear strange, ghostly sounds coming from the kitchen. It was as though the very walls themselves were whispering secrets to him. He dismissed it as his imagination at first, but the eerie occurrences continued. One night, as John was flipping burgers on the grill, he felt a chilling breeze sweep through the kitchen, even though all the windows were closed. He turned to see the back door, slowly swinging open and closed on its own. His heart raced as he approached the door and pushed it shut, locking it securely. He told himself it must have been a draft, but he couldn't shake the feeling that something else was at play. Another night, as John was washing dishes, he heard faint laughter echoing through the empty kitchen. He froze, his soapy hands trembling as he strained to identify the source of the laughter. But there was no one there. He was alone, and the laughter continued, growing louder and more sinister. As the weeks turned into months, John's unease in the kitchen grew. He confided in his coworker, Lisa, about the strange occurrences, but she just shrugged them off. "Frank's had this place forever," she said. "It's an old building, and weird things happen. Don't let it get to you." But John couldn't help but feel that something was terribly wrong in that kitchen. Something that went beyond the natural world. One night, as John was closing up the restaurant, he stayed behind to do some deep cleaning in the kitchen. He was determined to get to the bottom of the strange occurrences. As he scrubbed the floors, he heard a voice whispering his name, faint but distinct. "John." Startled, John looked around the empty kitchen. "Who's there?" No one answered, and the voice fell silent. John's heart pounded in his chest as he continued to clean, but he couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched. As the clock struck midnight, John decided to confront whatever was haunting the kitchen. He turned off the lights and stood in the darkness, waiting. The air grew colder, and he felt a presence behind him. Slowly, he turned around. Standing before him was a tall figure, its features obscured by shadows. John's breath caught in his throat as he realized that the figure was wearing a tattered apron, just like the one he had been given on his first day at Diner Delights. "Who are you?" John demanded, his voice trembling. The figure took a step closer, and the dim light revealed a gaunt, pallid face with hollow eyes. It reached out a hand, and John could see that its fingers were long and bony, like claws. "I am the man who worked in this kitchen long before you. I died here, trapped in this place, and I have been waiting for someone like you to set me free." John's mind raced as he tried to comprehend the terrifying apparition before him. "How can I set you free?" The figure pointed to a hidden compartment in the kitchen wall, concealed behind a hanging pot. "Open it," it said, its voice growing fainter. "Release me." With trembling hands, John reached for the hidden compartment and pulled it open. Inside, he found a small, dusty box. He opened it, and a cold wind rushed out, extinguishing all the lights in the kitchen. When the lights flickered back on, the figure was gone, and the kitchen felt strangely warmer. John was left alone, holding the box in his hands. Part IV. The end of the haunting. In the days that followed, John couldn't stop thinking about the mysterious figure and the box he had found. He confided in Lisa once again, and she urged him to get rid of it. "Whatever you do, don't open it," she warned. "You don't want to unleash whatever is inside." But John couldn't resist the temptation. Late one night, when he was alone in his apartment, he opened the box. Inside, he found a collection of old, faded photographs. They showed the man who had haunted him, smiling with Frank and other employees decades ago. As John flipped through the photos, he realized that the man had been a chef at Diner Delights, just like him. The man's name was Samuel, and he had died under mysterious circumstances while working in the kitchen. The photos seemed to suggest that Samuel had been a kind and jovial man in life. Determined to find answers, John decided to confront Frank about Samuel's death. He showed him the photographs and asked about the man in them. Frank's face grew pale, and he sighed heavily. "I thought I left